Hey, friends, thanks for joining me today for the live show. I've got my very special friend Carl Tykrid with me today, and he's going to talk. He just got back, in fact, from 2019 Burning Man. Can I call it a festival, Carl? Is that appropriate?
A festival, a movement, a community. It doesn't like being called a festival, but certainly it has a festival aspect to it, and
Yes,
definitely,
yes.
definitely the history of it is there.
Yes. Well, many of you that are watching, listening, were able to meet Carl recently. Carl and his lovely wife, Leanne, were here in Lima in July. I hope that you stopped by his table and chatted and bought a copy of his book, Game of Gods. It is, and I've told Carl this a number of times, it is in my opinion, and Jared's going to laugh because I say this every week, but we only get the best of the best, right? His book, Game of Gods, folks, if you haven't got it yet, please do yourself a favor and add it to your library. It is the best, it is, in my opinion, the preeminent book on New Age, on transformational culture. We could call it an expose on the whole evolutionary culture movement, if I can say it that way, Carl.
Yes.
Um, it really is a deep dive, not just into what you see happening, but why you see happening and all of the things that have led up to that. It explains it in great detail. So, Carl, thank you for joining me again.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I'm glad to be on the show and to talk about this important subject.
So, you just got back just a few days ago,
Friday.
actually. Yeah.
That that's right. Friday morning, very, very early Friday morning. Uh, it was a long 2.5 days. Might as well say 3 days because that's really what it is. 3 days of driving. 3 days down and 3 days back, and then 12 days in the desert. Made for a very long trip, and
Yes.
I'm glad to be back home. My wife is glad I'm back home, and now here we are discussing this.
Yes, and you took a team down there with you this time. I know there were at least three other individuals. Were there more than three?
We had a total of five in our camp. My friend Jen Wright from Phoenix came. Brian and Audrey from Red Deer arrived on Sunday, the opening of the event. And then we were fortunate to have a younger man from San Diego come and be a part of our team. He arrived on Thursday evening and stayed for the duration of the event. And then on the outside of the event, my friend Bob Worley had a team of men also from San Diego that were involved in doing outreach in the communities surrounding the Black Rock Desert.
Let me read just a little bit from Carl's book. It's just, well, let's see. I'll just read a paragraph. Then we'll talk about, because some folks want to know, Carl, they've heard of Burning Man, but they don't really know what it is. In fact, I had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours. I won't give his name on the air, but I'll tell you later offline. And he mentioned Burning Man, and someone wanted to really argue with him in that their understanding of Burning Man was that it was a Christian festival. And I thought, yeah, right,
Oh, sorry.
right, yeah, right, right. That's why I'm not going to mention his name online, but you know him, Audrey. You know him. Anyway, quote from Carl's book page. I know. I probably should have left that part out,
That's okay,
huh?
Mike. That's
Yeah.
good. But it just demonstrates how little knowledge there really is on the subject in
Yes.
some circles, and that's
Yes.
understandable. It's not, I mean,
Okay,
it's definitely is a different event.
let me make you laugh even more, Carl.
Okay.
Our friend said, no, no, that's not what it is at all. It's this, this, and this. And if you really want to know what it is, you need to get Carl Tykrib's book, Game of Gods, because he'll explain it all in there. And the response he received was, that's just one man's opinion. Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that is funny. That
That
is
is,
just
yeah, yeah,
that is really funny. A Christian
yeah,
event. Golly,
yeah.
I've never, Mike,
You
I've
didn't.
never heard it expressed as a Christian event.
That's
Uh,
exactly right. Although you
it,
did invade it, but I'll let you tell that story in just a
well,
second.
but let me tell you, if it's a Christian event, it is the most Christian pardon me, it is the most pagan,
The
blasphemous,
most, yes,
sexually generated event you'll ever go to as a Christian event.
that's exactly
Clo-
right. So there you
cl-
have it, straight
clothing,
out of the author's mouth.
clothing optional.
That's right. Yes. Amen. Yep. That's right. Yep. So from page 486, chapter 14, in fact, page 486 of Carl's book, under the subheading "Unpacking the Visionary Future Picture," I'm sorry, "Unpacking the Visionary Picture," Carl writes this: evolutionary culture, also couched as transformational culture, is an indicator of the West's acceptance of a new outlook. And here's the new outlook: the rejection of the Christian claim and the desire for enchantment. And the Christian claim is certainly encompasses the gospel and biblical Christianity and a biblical worldview. So this desire for enchantment, it is aesthetic and experiential, exploring and shaping, even transgressing and repackaging the attitudes aligned with postmodernism, self, capital S, of human potential, and New Age spirituality. Evolutionary culture, grounded in revolutionary social moods, reflects and refines the worldview already, this is in italics for emphasis, already embedded in society. That is a succinct explanation of the blindness of much of the church today, Carl, and the fact that many, many, many Christians are fast asleep if they think this is a Christian festival and what's going on out there, in fact, is a celebration. I'll call it a celebration by those who are um, well, they're calling for a new kind of reality. Let me say it that way. What do you think?
Yes, it is a new reality. It is a place where new realities are experimented with. It's a place where you're living your utopian dream. It's a place where people are experiencing for a 1 week period of time a sense of their own self, a kind of a sense of salvation, a sense of what an optimal reality in their view would look like. It's a place for people to experiment. It's a place for people to explore. Um, in terms of being a Christian event, Mike, you got me tickled there. Uh, it is so far removed from that, my friend. Here,
Yes.
I'm not sure if people can see this on the screen, but I'll just hold it up. This is one of the art pieces, or just one of the little art stickers that were put up in the washrooms, and here it's a mockery of Christ, uh,
Uh,
saying, and Jesus showed her that what was left in the porta potty, and said unto her, only excrement and toilet paper into the porta potties, for it pleases the Lord to not clog the cleaning equipment. Luke 23:24.
wow.
So there is a mockery, a constant mockery that you will see at the burn of Christianity. In fact, of all the different religious expressions you'll see there, and we saw Buddhist encampments, there was occult encampments, a number of shrines and places dedicated to Ganesha, the Hindu deity, and a lot of seeking the goddess and expressing your higher self. That was evident right throughout the event. But of all the religious expressions there, Christianity was the only one that was consistently being mocked. And I mean, that's what I've experienced now all three times that I've been. Christianity is certainly the one that does get mocked.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's understandable
It
given
is.
the history and the formation and all of the influences that have come together to really inspire year after year Burning Man. Let's talk about some of those roots, Carl, so that people will understand why this. How many thousands of people would you estimate, Carl, were there?
I believe the number this year was capped at roughly 80,000, 70,000
Wow.
participants, roughly 10,000 volunteers and service personnel. So it's a big event. I mean, it is a city. It is a
It is.
huge city with a 9-mile perimeter, and the perimeter actually extends beyond that. In that the rangers and law enforcement they patrol quite a ways out beyond the 9-mile perimeter. But 9 miles, we have a 9-mile trash fence that circles the entire city. And so it is a big event. It has its own, it has a city layout, it has streets, it has its own infrastructure, it has police, law enforcement, it has sewage, in that there are porta potties that are routinely every day cleaned out. You've got a very large infrastructure system needed. It has a radio station. It has a temporarily approved FAA airport that is
Wow.
built in the desert. And what people need to realize, and I was having this conversation last night with one of my relatives at a family gathering, and I was trying to explain that this is temporary. This all is built in the course of a couple of weeks for a 1 week 1 week period, and then it's dismantled and all removed. Everything is removed again in the course of a couple of weeks. So in a period of, let's say, 6 weeks, by the time it's said and done, you have gone from a flat alkali desert where there is absolutely nothing to a vibrant, thriving city of 80,000 people, and then back down to nothing within a couple of weeks after that.
And they pride themselves on not leaving a footprint, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Mike, part of their a big part of their permit from the Bureau of Land Management is contingent on the fact that they don't leave a footprint.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Now we've had a question already. Normally at the bottom of the hour, we'll start taking questions, Carl, from people that have joined us for the conversation. But Kathy's already posted one. So Kathy, you want to ask that question?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get my microphone. I have a person on Facebook, Carl, that's wanting to know when and how did all this get started? How long has this Burning Man been going on?
Since 1986. It started when a fellow by the name of Larry Harvey, with a small group of friends, went down to Baker Beach in San Francisco during the summer solstice of 1986. They brought a very crude human effigy, a human figure made of 2x4s down to the beach, soaked it with gas, and when the sun set, they lit her up. Had some beers. It was a good time had by all. Basically, just a party on the beach. But it had a feel to it. It had a quality to it, and so they decided to do it again next year, and more people showed up. And then they did it again the next year, and more people showed up. And then by, I believe it was 1990, and I'd have to look this up again, but I believe it was 1990 when all of a sudden there was like 600, 700 people on the beach, and it was an event. It was something that was anticipated. People were coming for it, and the police showed up and said, "Hey, you guys don't have a permit to burn anything on the beach. You guys need to disband." And so my memory serves me correct. They took the man figure up to the parking lot, chopped it up, and burnt it there. But then a group, and they had already been interacting quite a bit with Larry Harvey and the whole burn, kind of the beginning of this burn culture. A group known as the Cacophony Society, which is a guerrilla theater group, said, "Hey, look, we know a place out in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of northern Nevada, the Black Rock Desert, where there is nobody, there's nothing. It's a dead zone. We can take our man and we will burn it out in the Black Rock Desert, and we'll make this our zone trip. This is where we're going to go and to encounter our new reality." And so in 1990, the 1990 burn, the summer solstice burn, that was when the cops showed up. But they said, "Look, we can take this out on the September long weekend, Labor Day long weekend, and we'll do it then." And only a couple hundred people showed up at the Labor Day burn back in 1990. But by 95, 10,000 people were in attendance, and it just blossomed. It exploded. And in the year 2000, they dedicated their first temple. And ever since then, the temple has been a major part of this event, and it has only grown in size. And right now, the organization is working through with Bureau of Land Management, because this is on federal land. That's important for people to realize. It's on federal land. They're trying to secure a permit to give them an opening to have 100,000 people at the event. And that's really hit and miss whether that's going to happen.
Yeah. Wow.
But demand far outstrips supply, which is why there's now regional burns around the world. Canada has a number of them. There are regional burns across the US. Israel has a regional burn called Mid-Burn, where they burn an effigy of Adam and Eve. South Africa has a large burn. Even China has a Burning Man event.
Carl, are you able to tell us what the main demographics are of the attendees, the age, profession, income? I mean, what kind of people come to this?
Well, there are demographic studies. I don't have them available in my hands at the moment, but I'll tell you right now, the demographics range everything from little children, and there's a lot of children. In fact, we were camped not far from Kidsville, all the way up to senior citizens. But most of them, I would anticipate, would be the young professionals, those in their 20s and 30s and early 40s, those who are fairly affluent. It takes a fair amount of resources to get to the burn and to be a part of the burn. And when you take a look at some of the camps, and you need to realize this, when you take a look at some of those camps, these are six-figure camps, some of them. When you are building a pyramid structure that is essentially 7 stories high, and you've got an entire infrastructure built around some of these camps, this is not something done on a shoestring. There's some serious dollars involved. Erecting an airport in the middle of nowhere and watching some pretty cool aircraft flying in, a lot of helicopters coming in. We saw on our exodus on Monday a private jet leaving, and Brian, who was with me, was going like, a private jet in this alkali dust? I mean, those are throwaway engines now. That's a throwaway jet, because you're sucking in all this alkali dust into your system. So I mean, these are people of, for the most part, people who are well enough off that they can go to something like this. Now, people need to realize that there are 2 kinds of folks who go to Burning Man. There are those who are just coming for the party. Okay. There's a lot of that. A lot of people just coming for the party. And it is a party atmosphere. And so you have a lot of millennials and people who are attracted just for the music or for the musical acts. And then you have the social change agents, those who understand that this is a place where they are engaging in a culture shift. And they're coming with a different intent, although they do party too. They recognize that what is happening here is more than just a party, far, far more than just a party. This is a place where new visions and new ideas for restructuring civilization can be tested, can be played with, can be experimented with, and all done in real time. Literally a sandbox for social engineering.
Do they have something like this in England?
Yeah. Glastonbury Festival is like 300,000 people big. It's a little bit different. Well, it's very different, but it still has now Glastonbury, that festival, from what I understand, really kind of has the flavor of being a transformational event too. It's not just simply a concert venue anymore. It now has workshops, and there's green spaces and sacred spaces and all the things that kind of dovetail into evolutionary culture or evolutionary spirituality. In fact, for a few years, Glastonbury was sending ambassadors to Burning Man, and then Burning Man was sending official ambassadors back to Glastonbury.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And folks, listen, don't think this is just a bunch of rich people that have nothing better to do with their time. The burn all around the world, but especially the one here in Nevada, this is sponsored and supported by some pretty heavyweight corporations, isn't it, Carl?
Well, that's the one thing, Mike, you can't advertise at Burning Man. So it's hard to know sometimes where the money comes from for some of this. And a lot of it is volunteer based. The organization bought a piece of property called Fly Ranch which is adjacent to where the burn takes place. And I believe it was $7 million it cost for that property, and they had 14 donors. We were at a workshop where that was being discussed, and they were very adamant that those are anonymous donors. We don't know who those 14 individuals were who stepped to the plate.
Yeah. Well, if you take a look at Google's homepage just before Burning Man event kicks off, you can pretty much guess that Google is sponsoring. And when I say sponsoring, I mean giving money toward. And why? Why is that, Carl?
Well, because Google and Burning Man are absolutely intertwined. In
Okay.
1998, when Google launched itself as a corporation, that week, and that was also the same week that Burning Man was on in 1998, Google, they splashed up on their homepage their very first Google Doodle, which was the man, Burning Man figure. And that was Google's way of saying to Silicon Valley, look, we're burners first, and we're going to the desert. Silicon Valley basically followed. I mean, this is in many respects the unofficial United Nations of Silicon Valley. You run into a lot of people who are either coders or tech entrepreneurs or involved in some way, shape, or form within Silicon Valley. But the Google connection doesn't just start and end in 1998 with the very first Google Doodle. When Google hired Eric Schmidt to be CEO, and that made the company into what it is today, the thing that really allowed his resume to pop, and there was like 50 different people trying to get that position, but his resume popped because he had Burning Man on his resume. And from what I understand, then he was more or less tested. Do you understand? If you understand Burning Man, you will get Google. It basically really kind of operates on those same principles of looking for those nodes or those networks of information in what looks like a sea of chaos and confusion, but it's not chaos and confusion. Google went so far for quite a while to decorate the Google headquarters with Burning Man art, Burning Man imagery. For a time, they would send shuttle buses from Google headquarters to the burn. They had in-house videos on how to do burn for Google employees. And right now, as Google is still working on and building their great big brand new headquarters, a great big huge technology hub in Silicon Valley, Google has commissioned Burning Man artists to put massive art installations all around the new Google headquarters. So the two are completely intertwined. I mean, my goodness, when you use Google products, even like Google Maps, some of those applications and some of the processes you're using were tested at the burn, and were very much a part of coming out of that burn culture. So there is a significant, and I can't stress this enough, a significant tie-in between Burning Man, Google, the new way of doing entrepreneurship, and that came out at a workshop that we attended just last week, as they were discussing, hey, even Google's basically the environment of play and work all in the same location, allowing creativity to flow, has some of that has come out of the burn experience. That there's a connection there too. Yeah, there is a tight connection, and it's an important connection.
Yeah.
My goodness, when Elon Musk went to the premiere showing HBO's show Silicon Valley, he famously chided the producer of the show and the cast of the show by saying, "None of you get Silicon Valley, because none of you have been to Burning Man, and if you don't understand Burning Man, you don't understand Silicon Valley." That was Elon Musk. I'm just paraphrasing, but
yeah.
that was his slap down to the producer of the HBO show Silicon Valley.
So let me use that as a segue into this, Carl. It's important, and Carl writes this, page 525. It's important to understand that the burn is not a single event. Listen, if your impression so far is that this is just a drunken, drug-induced orgy, well, it is for some folks, but that's not the point. Listen, these folks are very, very serious about what they're doing. But it's not a single event. It is instead a container for an array of interests and experiences. The definitive guide to what transpires is the annually published What, When, Where, or What, Where, When. This book is handed to participants when entering a city, and it lists many of the daily options, lectures, discussions, rituals, and other activities. Since 2011, the What, Where, When has been 160 pages in length, with each page averaging 10 descriptive listings. Everything under the sun is open to explore, from the serious to the silly, the sexual to sociable, the spiritual to sacrilegious. Here are some of the camps, and then I want you to talk about some of the camps that stuck out for you, Carl, and the team of folks that were there with you. Here are some of the camps. Journey into Gender. Gender Blender was the name of the camp. So entering this coming of age at any age ritual to redefine gender and reclaim past rights. Folks, they're serious about this. Great work, Holy Guardian Angel. So this was in Sacred Spaces Village. Aleister Crowley, well, now there's a name a lot of you should be familiar with. Believe knowledge and conversation with one's holy guardian angel should be the preeminent goal of every magician. Fire dodgeball. So this was in Zoom, the camp Zoom. I'm not going to read all these, Carl. I'm going to flip it back to you. The point that I'm trying to make here is this, folks. These are some very intelligent, educated, wealthy people that are coming together to brainstorm ways that they can move not just the American culture, but global culture into this concept of a new reality. Carl calls it re-enchantment or oneness. Carl, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned some of the events that happen in the camps. I'm going to hold up to the screen. This is the 2019 Where, What, When guide, and this year's theme was Metamorphosis, just so people can see a picture of it. And then there are a lot of events, and some of the more important events weren't listed in this year's guide, but there's a lot of events that you could go to, a lot of workshops. Here's the list of the Palenque Norte lectures at Camp Soft Landing, which is literally like ground zero for the psychedelic community, the academic psychedelic community. And so you have medical doctors, you have professors, you have authors who are doing lectures and doing roundtable discussions, people engaged in all aspects of the psychedelic community. And another one was Entheo. I went to one of the workshops by Alex and Allison Gray, who are they are the world's foremost visionary artists. And Alex Gray was discussing visionary art and artwork as the new universal religion, and that all religions can ultimately find their meaning and their destiny as we explore art now as a spiritual journey, as a religious journey. Other ones. Here's an example, and this is a long one. I'm not gonna read the list off. It's Naked Heart. Naked Heart is a large theme camp. And I'm going to put my reading glasses on, and I'll just read you the top part of their listing. Naked Heart is devoted to the full embodiment of the divine feminine, the goddess essence. At our core, we all hear the essential call, echoes of ancient remembering. The way through is rarely clear. We each have begun the journey into pure self, but on different paths. Naked Heart gathers fellow travelers to share the wealth of experiences. And it goes on and on and on. And yes, it's a lot of it is very sexual in its orientation, very, very sexual. In terms of some of the other camps, we went to Camp Mystic, which a couple of times we went to some of the workshops, and the workshops kind of flopped. In one case, the workshop, the person who was leading the workshop was certainly high as a kite. And after about 20 minutes, everybody had left the room because it was obvious this was going to go nowhere. The guy was done. It was pretty interesting. And then at one point, we did attend a workshop at Camp Mystic. It was an evening event described as basically a journey to 2030, because 2030 is the timetable for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and that their purpose was to align with those Sustainable Development Goals, that they are advancing towards global governance. We are moving towards one world. We had leading artists describe and discuss what 2030 will look like. We had a very famous figure in the cryptocurrency world talk about his vision for 2030 and coming together for one world in 2030. At one point, the moderator described the kind of people who are coming to Burning Man as the visionaries and the grandchildren and the holders of the visions of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. From that era, they had their own version of the New World Order, and now we carrying a vision forward as the grandchildren of those kinds of thinkers, and we are now the ones who are carving out our version of a new world order, and it's happening at the Burn. And this is where those visionaries meet. This is where they come together. And it was very adamantly expressed that way to us. So again, for people who think this is just a drunken orgy in the desert, yes, there is a lot of drugs. Yes, there are people who are absolutely inebriated, and at the same time, there's way more going on than the party. The party is just one shadow of what this event is. There's much more going on, as obviously described.
Yes, and we're gonna explore that when we come back from our sponsor break, folks. If you have a question out there on any of the platforms you're watching us on, please drop that in the comments or in the feedback, and we'll get that question to Carl, and we'll be with you right after this word from our sponsors.
Healthy living through LifeVantage. Scientific research has validated oxidative stress as the root cause of aging and most disease. Oxidative stress is the result of the production of free radicals at the cellular level that damage our bodies. Protandim reduces free radical damage by 40% in 30 days. It does this by triggering the body's intelligence, activating the NRF2 protein, which in turn produces its own powerful protective antioxidant enzymes. LifeVantage Protandim, NRF1 and NRF2 work together to enable your body to rejuvenate itself on a massive scale, whether by upregulating your genes' ability to produce their own antioxidants, your cell's ability to produce mitochondria, or your digestive system's ability to regulate bacteria. We're helping you stay on top of the aging process while delivering the mental clarity and overall well-being you need every day to get the absolute most of your life. More information is available at www.abcgotit.com/MIKA68. www.abcgotit.com/MIKA68.
Hi friends, Works LLC is a manufacturer of custom-made holsters, mag carriers, knife sheaths, and accessories. Works is your one-stop shop for high-quality inside or outside the waistband concealed carry holster. Works LLC is a Christian and family-owned and operated company that values made in the USA. Visit Works LLC, www.werkz.com, works.com, Works LLC, 855-937-5901, 855-937-5901, Works LLC.
This is Dr. John Diamond with Peacemakers Outreach. I would like to personally invite you, your friends, and church families to the first annual Faith and Freedom Conference that's being held at the Edinboro Camp and Conference Grounds on September 28th. Our lineup includes a group of the strongest Christ-centered American patriots ever brought to Western Pennsylvania.
The Faith and Freedom Conference in Edinboro features moderator Dr. Mike Spalding of Soaring Eagle Radio, Duran Reese, president of Salt and Light Council, nationally known speakers and authors William Federer and Matt Truella, Dan Fisher, a leader of the Modern Black Robe Regiment, Rusty Thomas of Operation Save America, syndicated radio host Bradley Dean of Sons of Liberty Radio, and Coach Dave Daubenmeyer of Past the Salt Ministries.
It's the Faith and Freedom Conference in Edinburgh, September 28th. For tickets and information, go to faithandfreedomconference.com. That's faithandfreedomconference.com. Faith and freedom. You can't have one without the other.
Hi, friends. Thanks for staying with us, and thank you for supporting our sponsors. It is much appreciated. Kathy, you had a question that came in that I wanted to ask Carl.
Yes, Carl, Cheryl is wanting to know about your camp and if you were able to minister to anyone.
Oh, good question. Thank you. Our camp name is Camp of the Unknown God. It's a non-registered camp that we put up. It's a sign that goes up in front of our tent. And this year there was 5 of us. And yes, first of all, you need to understand for the first couple of days, it's just getting yourself oriented. And so when Brian and Audrey came in, it was spending a couple of days just getting them oriented to the place. I had already been there 4 days before it even opened. I had an early access pass. And so I had already kind of got myself acclimated to the place. So a couple of days is just getting yourself kind of figured out. All right, where is everything? And where are you? Where are you located in terms of the city? And then you know what was good was just the name of the camp itself allowed some discussions to take place. It takes a little while for things to kind of get moving. Last year we had people stopping right at the camp, even walking by going, who is this unknown God? This year we didn't have that. This year we were on the move a lot. We weren't at the camp too much. But in the course of conversations, people would say, what camp are you with? And then you would say, hey, Camp of the Unknown God, and then explain that. Brian had some great conversations where people just literally come up out of the blue to talk to Brian. Brian's got that way about him for some reason. It's kind of cool. And and all of a sudden, Brian would be explaining what the camp's all about and giving the Christian message through that. Audrey and Taylor, the fellow that joined us, had a good conversation after we walked out of a workshop with a fellow Canadian, giving him the gospel and talking to him about Christianity. When I came into the burn Thursday afternoon and Thursday evening, I had problems with my early access pass, and I got shunted over to a place called D-Gate, which is kind of like where they make the decision if you're going in or going out based on can they fix the problem or not. And I ended up having a great conversation with a business entrepreneur from Berlin. Talk to him about oneism versus twoism, what is ultimate reality, taking it from a biblical approach. At the end of it all, I gave him a copy of my book. He was pretty excited about that, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to read it. And Jen had a number of fantastic conversations. In fact, at one point, this is kind of crazy, we had a windstorm that blew through the camp, and it blew a bat. The wind comes off the mountains, and so this poor bat must have been carried by the wind down the mountain, and it ended up trying to find shelter under the tent fly of Jen's tent. And then Jen got a picture or two, and then the wind picked up again, and this poor little bat couldn't hang on, and poof, it was gone. But while Jen was at a particular camp dealing on psychedelics, a camp devoted to psychedelic studies, she ended up talking to this guy beside her, showed him the picture of this bat. It opened up the conversation. What camp are you with? She described the Camp of the Unknown God, what it was all about. He believed in the cosmic Christ. Jen was able to introduce to him the person of Jesus Christ, which is different than your idea of the cosmic Christ. That opened up a bigger conversation. 2 days later, Jen, myself, and this individual, I won't mention his name, he is kind of the Henry Kissinger of this movement, okay? It was a big deal. We sat down for 2 hours and just ended up having a very long, interesting discussion of evangelical Christianity, true Christianity, versus the concepts of oneness and the cosmic Christ. And at the end of it all, he has a copy of my book, and I'm like, when you're done, or if you read my book, and that's in your hands, if you read my book and you have questions, here's my card, here's my address, here's my contact information, you call me. we'll talk.
Praise God.
And and Jen opened up that door using the picture of the bat. But bottom line was, it's not the kind of place where encounters are happening all around you all the time. They can. I talked to a woman just yesterday, a Christian woman who got into the burn. She called me up yesterday. This is Sunday afternoon. We talked for about an hour. She had a lot of opportunities to share, and sometimes you share and it's, nothing's really happening. Nothing is taking place. There's no real interest, and the conversation just breaks away, and away you go. And then other places, you can have a really good hard talk. And sometimes we were frustrated because it didn't seem anything was happening. But I had to remind our crew, look, you've only been here for a couple of days, literally. This is a whole different world. This is a different culture. I've been to the burn for 3 years, a total of 27 days. And I'm only starting to really feel like I've got a pretty solid handle on some different sides of the burn community itself. But when you're going off to a foreign mission field, because this is a foreign mission field, when you send missionaries off to a foreign mission field, it takes time for them to really be able to figure things out and begin to operate that way. Here, it's kind of like you're thrown into the thick of it. You go now. Yes, it's going to take quite a while to wrap your head around what's happening and to really wrap your head around what you're doing and how this is all going to work together. But at the end of it, we came away with a number of good conversations and some really interesting doors that we hope will open up even wider as people begin to wrestle with what it means to consider the real Jesus Christ versus the cosmic Christ.
Yes, amen. Amen. So what you can take away from this, folks, is, as Carl has written throughout his book, is that Burning Man itself is a platform to explore alternative spiritualities. And so within that context, doesn't it make sense to send in the special forces, the 10 of the unknown God, and to share the true biblical Christ? Brilliant idea. Any other questions, Kathy, that are out there?
No, Mike, I don't see any.
Okay. Are there any questions from anyone in the queue that you would like to ask? Please unmute yourself and ask away. All right. Well, we're going to move on then. Reenchantment. That is really the subtitle. Game of Gods. What does that even mean, Carl? And let's explore this whole idea of oneness. Now, folks, listen. We know this is going to happen. Carl is telling us how this is going to happen. Well, what do you mean, Mike? Well, you study the book of Revelation and you see that in the end of days, there's going to be not only a one world government, but a what? One world religion. And some people have said, well, it's going to be this, or it's going to be that, or it's going to be this. Let me tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be oneness. That's where we're going. It's going to be oneness. So, Carl, please tell us, what does that even mean? Oneness.
Oneness is the idea that ultimate reality, the three divisions, classical divisions of ultimate reality, God, man, and nature, are all essentially the same. They all share a commonality. There is no higher God. Nature itself is God. You are God. Everything essentially is God. That's oneness, or one-ism, as Dr. Peter Jones describes it. The biblical worldview is no. Reality is not one-ism or oneness. Reality is otherness. God as being distinct and ultimately different, unique from creation. There is no comparative point. He is outside of time, space, and matter. Isaiah chapter 40 brings that out just beautifully, and the rest of Scripture reveals this God to us. In fact, you can't imagine this kind of a God. You cannot conjure a God like this, because you have zero comparative point. There is no point in nature that you can compare him to and properly come up with a parallel. This is a God who has to reveal himself to us, period. And so that is the biblical story. That is the biblical narrative of this God revealing himself to mankind so that we can know him personally, so we can understand who he is, and so that we can have a right relationship with him. And so the concept of oneism and otherness, or oneness and two-ness, is a very, very important point to understand. And my book, Game of Gods, fleshes that out and then shows how oneism is displayed in religion, displayed in the New Age, displayed in politics, including the idea of world government, because there is a political side to oneism, how transhumanism demonstrates oneism in this idea that man and machine can merge and to become its own, we can become deity through that venue, and then through culture, because there has to be a cultural component as well. And Burning Man is a reflection of that cultural component. And so you see the theme of oneness displayed all over Burning Man. In fact, the very experience of Burning Man has a onist feel. It is something you do feel. It is experiential, and that's important for people to understand. This is different than just your mundane city street where people go to and from work. You go to shopping malls. You do the same thing day in, day out. No, events like Burning Man are unique in that it strips away the mundane and allows you to feel an ecstatic sense of excitement, of energy, of connectivity, and you walk away going, I have now experienced some type of social, personal transformation, just as I have now been a part of a larger collective process of transformation. And so events like Burning Man are important because they explore this cultural, artistic, experiential sense of what oneness is and how oneness can feel. The biblical worldview says, no, you know something? Your feelings do not guide truth or a sense of reality. Instead, reality is given to us by a person, in the person of Jesus Christ, not necessarily how you feel. In fact, and this is not to discount feelings or experiences, but it is to say that feelings and experiences do not rule truth. They do not dictate truth. Something else that's important for people to realize when it comes to things like Burning Man is there's just a lot of people, and I mean, Mike, a lot of people who are coming, who are hurt, who are searching, who are grieving, who are searching desperately for some meaning, for some purpose, for something. And this really comes out when you go to the temple. Burning Man, of course, at the end of the week, they burn this massive human effigy. But another prominent feature of the burn is that you have a very dedicated ritual space, a sacred space, and that is the temple. And all week long, people are there. There's weeping, there's crying. People are depositing the ashes of loved ones. They're writing notes on the walls of the temple, expressing their sorrow, expressing their grief, expressing anger, forgiveness, joy. The list goes on. It's a place where people pour out their emotions and are seeking some form of release or solace or something to kind of bring back a sense of closure or to bring some meaning into the life. And it's a very sobering place. It has a very sobering feel. When the man burns on Saturday night, it's a party. It's a party. You have art cars everywhere. There's fireworks. There's fireballs and explosions. It's a cacophony of sounds, and it's an absolute spectacle to the eyes. When the temple burns on Sunday night, it's a very different feel. The art cars are quiet. You will hear people who might yell out, "I love you." You might hear people sobbing or crying beside you. You'll hear sniffling, but it's generally pretty quiet compared to the night before. It's absolutely a remarkable difference. And it's people who feel like, yeah, they're trying to find some release. They're trying to find some catharsis, some sense of healing. And doesn't that speak to human nature? We are looking, we're searching, we need something. For the Christian, we fall on our knees before Jesus Christ, recognizing that he's the one who takes our sin. He's the one that takes our guilt. He's the one that takes our pain. And while we still struggle in life with feelings, and we struggle in life with problems, and we do struggle, there is no question, the Christian struggles, we know that ultimately it's at his feet. In this case, it's temporary. You put it in a temple. You long for some sense of connection. You long for some sense of healing. It all burns at the end. And the question is, did you really find that healing? Did you really find that release? Last year, we had the opportunity to talk to some different people after the temple had burned, and the question came up, did you leave something at the temple? And when people said yes, and after the temple had burned, we'd ask, now do you feel a sense of closure, a sense of release? No. I'm sure some people do, but a lot of people don't, because it's temporary. It's temporary. This is a temporary form of spirituality.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Boy, that is a very, very convincing defense of Christians being at an event like Burning Man, to go and take advantage of whatever doors the Lord is going to open for you. I just am amazed that you were able to put a copy of your book in the hands of the Henry Kissinger of the movement, as you described this person. I can only imagine what the Lord might do through that, Carl.
And you know, Mike, it's a small things too. It's the little conversations that you have. It's just sometimes you're dropping those little seeds. Sometimes it's maybe not even dropping a seed, but trying to create a little bit of fertile ground to put a seed in. And that's all part of it too.
And I want to also say, Carl, some people listening, watching may think, well, all of this is so far removed from my existence, from my life, where I'm living in, the plains of Manitoba, or the cornfields of Kansas, or someplace else. That's just not true anymore, is it, Carl?
Not even close. It is all around you, because really this is a reflection of the worldview that your neighbors already have and hold.
Okay.
It's a reflection of the worldview that's coming to you through the entertainment industry, through music. It's the stuff being taught to you in your elementary schools already. I mean, this just simply is that expression of a worldview that is already dominant within our culture.
Yeah.
And people need to wrap their heads around that. This is not, the event itself has an importance in that it does shape the culture and it does shape worldviews, but it also at the same time is a mirror of the worldview and of the culture that's already accepted this kind of thinking.
That's exactly right. Just remember, folks, movers and shakers. Carl said some of these camps being put up, 6-figure camps. That means, when I hear that, that means these folks are well connected, and that means they have audiences of some kind. They have people that they're influencing, and that just cascades down to where every one of us live. Carl, we had another question that came in, so I want to get this out there before we're done for today. And the question was this: how do you personally prepare to attend an event such as this?
Good question. There's two things you're going to be thinking about in terms of preparation. First, the physical preparation, which a lot of people, I don't think, realize how intensive that itself is. I mean, that is an undertaking that is considerable. And then the spiritual preparation. And part of the spiritual preparation is recognizing that, number one, you're going in for a purpose. You're going in for a reason. You already draw your moral line in the sand before you go, and this is important. When we interacted with the young man who joined us later in the week, I had to say to him, I had to say, look, you have to draw your moral line now, what you will or will not do, because the place is sexually charged. There's a very sensual aspect to it. There's a lot of things, a lot of activities. It's a clothing optional event. You have to know the difference between finding something offensive and being personally offended. That's a big thing. That's a huge thing. And you got to wrestle through what that looks like. There's prayer that's involved. You have people supporting you in prayer. The one aspect of this too is the very fact that you know what you're going into. You know, as a Christian, where you're going into. And this isn't my first kick at the can when it comes to Burning Man. I've been there 3 times, and I've been to a regional. I've been to a lot of other events, as you well know, Mike, that are a little bit more on the dicey side, okay? But you go in with the understanding that Christ is on your side. You're his child. You're to be salt and light, wherever that may lead you. And honestly, at the end of the day, every knee will bow. We're bowing in love to him now. Every knee will bow. Every knee will bow, including those who shake their fists at him, and they'll be bowing eventually in fear and in judgment. And so when you realize that, you're going, okay, if he is for me, if I am bowing my knee now, why do I fear what man can do? And yes, of course, there's times when the aspect of fear comes in, but realistically, I mean, these are some of the things you end up wrestling with before you go, and even during the event itself. In terms of physical preparation, oh my word, it is daunting, and you have to really work at it. In fact, you're working at it way before the summer even begins. Getting a ticket is exceptionally difficult, and we really wrestled to get the tickets we did. And then the physical preparations, dealing with the hot, dealing with the heat, the dust, dealing with the wind, building shelters, bringing in food, bringing in all your own water. There is no vendors, and so everything that you need for that week you bring in. There's no buying or selling. It's gifting, not barter. It's gifting. And so you have to bring in all your own food. You take out all your own trash. You take everything out. And so there's an intense amount of work required, just physical work required to go. It's just not something you just pack up, the car before the week begins and go, oh, I'm going to go to Burning Man. It just doesn't work like that. This is not your regular camping trip.
That's right. Yeah. Amen.
Hey, and it's hot. I mean, it's 7 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. The heat wakes you up, and by 9:30, 10 o'clock, your deodorant is already melted on the table beside you.
Wow.
Even this morning, going to church, pardon me, not this morning, yesterday morning, going to church, I opened up my Bible, and poof, out come a cloud of playa dust because, yeah.
Wow. Jared, would you put Carl's site up, please, his website on the screen for folks to see? And folks, I would encourage you, go to Carl's site. Right there it is. Carl, you want to give the website?
Sure, gameofgods.ca. That's the website for my book. You can read excerpts, and you can order it through Amazon that way as well.
Yes. So I encourage you to get the book, folks. Bottom line is this, and I'll close this out with this quote from your book, Carl. You ended the book this way, and I thought it was a brilliant way to do it. Burning Man is more than just a social, spiritual movement. It is a mission field. Carl's already said that. It is a mission field. Wherever unbelievers are gathered, God is going to call people to go there and share the true Christ. After all, the burn is but a reflection of the world, and we as believers in Jesus Christ are his witnesses to the ends of the earth. Aren't we called to the ends of the earth? Well, we are. And the Lord said that he would send his people to the ends of the earth. We are to be truth tellers, loving representatives of God from Black Rock City to your backyard. Black Rock City is also a wake-up call to the Christian community. Listening to those who participate in transformational culture. And by the way, we don't have time to mention them now, Carl, but there are some that go on right here, festivals, right here in Ohio, in the Midwest. Do some research, folks. I encourage you to do that. There might be a transformational festival right there close to you that you could attend and be a representative for Jesus Christ. So again, Carl, I really appreciate you and your friendship, your research, your help, your direction. When I have questions about this kind of stuff, I go to Carl. Carl, what do you got? Because you can see behind him. You can see behind him a picture of his research library. It is well stocked, and Carl always points me in the right direction with information that I need. So, Carl, God bless you. Thank you for joining me today on the show, and thank you for sharing this year's Burn event. And I look forward to chatting with you again about next year. And I hope that we can celebrate someone professing faith in Christ. Amen.
Amen. Hey, thanks, Mike. And I also want to do a quick shout out to Jen, to Brian, to Audrey, to Bob Worley, to Taylor, who joined us, and everybody and especially everybody who helped support with our GoFundMe site, who made this possible and really worked hard to put us on location. So thank
Amen.
you.
Amen. Thank you, Carl. Hey, folks, remember this: renewing our minds is not an option. I'll see you next Monday. God bless you guys.